Okay, listen, you're the one who put your dick on the Wheel of Fortune. I just took it to its logical extreme.
Hello and welcome to episode 3 of ScapeChatz, a podcast about Farscape. I'm Alan, and I'm here with my co-host Magellan, and you're going to ruin it.
Can we start again?
Yes, I can.
I didn't know.
Hello and welcome to ScapeChatz episode 3, a podcast about Farscape. My name is Alan, and I'm here with Magellan.
Yo.
Hi there, buddy. How's it going?
That was much less awkward.
No, yeah, we are on take 2 of our introduction.
Oh, you're not going to include take 1?
No, God, no. Why would I do that? I mean, I have it, so maybe you guys just heard it. That was great.
No, I loved it.
We watched...
Let's hear it one more time. Sorry. Let's just one more time.
Hello and welcome to episode 3 of ScapeChatz, a podcast about Farscape. I'm Alan, and I'm here with my co-host Magellan, and you're going to ruin it. Can we start again? Yes, I can. I didn't know.
That was hilarious. Oh,
and
man.
We're back. Oh, beautiful, beautiful.
Oh, good stuff. Hey, we watched 2 episodes this week, as we always do, Magellan.
What?
What
are you sure?
Who are you? Is this Skype?
Yeah, we did. We did watch 2.
We watched fucking some bullshit. I don't know.
We watched, well, let me tell you. We watched PK Tech Girl and Thank God It's Friday Again. And just as a reminder, we're watching these in the Netflix order and not in the original air order. So for us, these are episodes 5 and 6, but when they were aired, PK Tech Girl was episode 7, and Thank God It's Friday Again was episode 6.
Right, and between the episodes, I was thinking about that. Like, do these follow into each other in any way? And it's like, no, they don't.
Not really, but they don't really need to.
Right. We're at the point in the show where every episode is self-contained enough and that they can just kind of flow into each other in any order. They don't need to necessarily go in there's no like canonical order, I guess. Yeah,
all the character continuity that we're drawing upon is from the first episode, from what was set up in the pilot, and we're still exploring a lot of that stuff.
Exactly. And so PK Tech Girl is the first episode we watched. First of all, this was a really good week for like character development, which I love. I think it's quickly becoming my favorite aspect of the show, and PK Tech Girl had that in spades. It's considered by many to be the sort of first very good episode of the show. Which I see the point. It's a pretty small scale episode in a good way. It has a point to make and makes it. It was written by Nan Hagen and directed by Tony Tilsa, and it originally aired January 24th, 2000 in the UK and April 16th, 99 in the US. So we're in a really good time for for sci-fi, I guess.
Yeah, there's so our resource here is the Farscape wiki, farscape.wikia.com. And in the background information section, it says that Rockne S. O'Bannon, the creator, was all like, "Hey, this is where we found our tone, guys. It like really worked out." And one of the reasons that he cites for that is, believe it or not, this is the first episode. I don't know why I said believe it or not. You're gonna believe it if it's true. This is the first episode that was shot by itself, as opposed to being shot in parallel with another episode.
Oh, interesting.
So they had more time, not more time, like the actors were just able to focus on the one story, and the crew, there was a bit less pressure on them. So
I always wonder how hard that must be for actors to be filming everything that takes place in a certain setting at once, even if they're not all from the same episode.
Yeah. Well, because you have to be like, all right, what part are we at now? And you have to sort of recalibrate and have this very atemporal sense of your character. Like you can say, oh, okay, it's 5 minutes past 4, so my character was feeling sad.
I just got broken up with, and then now we're 10 episodes down the line, and I have a new girlfriend, and it's a whole thing.
Right, or the scene we filmed right after is we're still together.
Right, and then the breakup is like next week. It can throw you for a loop, I guess.
Yeah.
But I really liked this episode. It took a little while to get going, as every sort of good Farscape episode does, but it starts like pretty much any other. I think this episode starts in a very standard way, and then the second one starts in a very non-standard way, which we'll get to. But PK Tech Girl basically begins, and the Moya comes across a peacekeeper ship in space, And as is typical fashion, John Crichton is like, let's go help them. And Zahn is like, I'm down. And then Dargo's like, fucking, we need to get data. Actually, no, I'm sorry, I messed that up.
I think it was like a reversal of the usual setup, because usually John's like, oh, what's up with that ship? And everyone else is like, who cares? We're going to jump out of here. But this time, it was, I almost called her Claudia. It was Aaron and Dargo. Aaron and Dargo who were like, no, we got to take a look at this ship. And John, who's like, let's jump the fuck out of here, please.
And I don't know, I had some problems with John's like motivations in this episode, but that made sense because he's just like, we know how peacekeepers act around us, and this doesn't look safe at all. Nothing about this looks valuable to us because it's a dead ship. You wouldn't immediately assume that there are people in there.
Yeah. So let's just, I guess we could keep going through the plot, but I kind of want to ask you what you mean by John Crichton's motivations confusing you.
Well, I mean, yeah, so there's basically they get on the ship. It's Aaron and John, and they find a peacekeeper lady on there, and she knows Aaron's son, and she's like, oh, we abandoned you, and then they left me by accident, and now they're probably going to come back for me soon. And within like minutes, I feel like John Crichton and this girl get a thing for each other. Mm-hmm. And they just are like in a romantic relationship almost, where they're like very touchy-feely, and it's very meet cute. Like the scene where they're fixing something on the ship and she like gets something in her eye or whatever, and then he's like, oh, let me look at it, and then it's like a perfect opportunity for him to look her right in the eye. You're like, barf. It feels like they're forcing them together in a really weird way.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's for a number of excusable reasons, though. Like, one, they want to tell a compact love story that wouldn't work if they stretched it out over multiple episodes, because it would interfere with other episodes' stories. So that's one thing. Because they need to get you to care about her at the end, so that the ending means something at all. And then the other thing of it is, like, John Crichton's fucking lonely and horny, dude.
It's that, and it's the ending that make this plot work for me. Because it's the romance stuff that I'm like, ugh, gross. But when it's the, like, I just want to be able to feel someone that is humanoid. Like, there are several lines in this episode and in the second one about where John Crichton is, like, really happy to see alien races that are, like, relatively related to humans.
Yeah.
Because it's, like, the first example of races that he can associate with and be like, oh, yeah, these are cool people because they have arms and legs and penises, and that's cool. So he sees this opportunity. He's like, oh, sweet. And also, like, I don't know. You can talk about how much you think that relationship feels real or not, but the way that it plays out and the things that it does to Crichton and Aaron's son's relationship are very important and very good to take care of this early in your show.
Yeah.
Because they establish that their relationship is no longer implied and no longer, like, flirty and subtle, and that there is clearly something between the two, or, like, there's, like, questionably things between the two of them.
Yeah. It's a good way of continuing the sort of like will they won't they energy without making it grating, I think.
I agree.
Because they're not closing the door on John and Aaron, but they are forcing them to both say like, hey, like, we're not together and we don't know if we want to be or not, and so if we're gonna like screw around with PK Tech girls, like, it's cool.
And if we're just going to kind of talk about that relationship for a bit, I love it. It feels so adult to me, the way that it's handled here. Like, it feels like it's being handled by mature adults who know how relationships work. Because, Crichton and PK Tech Girl finally get to share a kiss, and it's a really nice...
What's her name?
Ready? Are you ready for it?
Alyssa. Oh, no, just kidding. That's the girl. That's the actress's name. It's Galena or Jelena?
I think they said Galena, because I kept thinking, Gilly. So Galena and him kiss, and then, of course, Aaron's son sees it, and, of course, he's like, I'm sorry, that was awkward, and she's like, no, it wasn't. Why? I don't care. Why would I care? Like, it's exactly that, but immediately, because she's cool and she's not, it's not just, like, a dumb rom-com. Is it in that scene, or is it later in the episode where they're like, yeah, I kind of liked you? I
mean, like, on both their parts, they're being pretty mature about it, because on the one hand, John's like, normally that scene would end where she'd say, no, it's nothing, don't worry about it, like, I don't care, and then she'd walk away, and then he'd kind of stand in the background and drop his hands by his side.
And then she'd, like, cry in a corner.
I'm going to deal with this, yeah, but instead he's like, no, wait, like, we're crewmates, we live on the same ship, we can't just be like, no, it's cool, like, what is the deal? And then she turns around and she says, "When I first met you, I thought you were interesting."
Which is such a good adjective.
Yeah.
In this case. Because it's so not... Like, they really don't want to just be like, I loved you secretly. And they so easily could, but we've kind of pulled out this weird overarching theme of the show, which is that communication can bring together people and different beings. And that moment of communication where it's just there's nothing hidden about that. It's very raw. It's very just like, yeah, I had a thing for you, or like I have a thing for you. And he's like, that's gonna be weird if we like make that a thing. So let's just be professional and understand that we both have adult needs, and we can just be cool about that.
Right.
And if I'm not mistaken, like that's kind of where it goes. Like it's not left hanging. Mm-hmm. And then it goes to the end of the episode where it's this really nice... It's yet another, like, end of Farscape episode where they're like, oh, so that was crazy. And they're sitting on, like, a deck. And I think this is my favorite scene of the whole episode, which is a little unfair because it's building on the rest of the episode. But he goes to see her, and she's like, oh, I hate that I got ambushed. And they're like, nah, but we got the weird aliens that were on the ship, the Sheyang. And he says it like that, I think. And then she's like, no, like, that's not what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And she says on her world showing a sign of pain is weakness, and he shouldn't presume to understand her. But continuing the theme of like empathy and communication, he's like, no, like it would be the worst. Like I always talk about how badly like I want to go home, and like it would be so nice to just go back to my family. But like, what if I went back and like, whoops, I went back and it's the future and they're all dead, or they just all died of something mysteriously when I was gone. Like, wouldn't that suck? And she's like, yeah, I guess it would. And she like, this whole episode is her kind of doing that and like realizing that like this world that she lived on, this ship, these peacekeeper ships are no longer the place for her. And yet she still has very real memories of them.
Yeah.
I love that, the pathos in that scene.
Mm-hmm. I like another scene for that specific idea a bit more, but I don't want to talk about it yet because I want to get to it naturally in the course of the plot. But that's a little teaser.
Excellent. I love me a good tease.
I wanted to say a little something about John Crichton's motivations here in this episode.
Go for it. Which
was kind of refreshing, but also a little frustrating. Nothing ever seemed urgent enough to him. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
Like, he never really lost his cool about anything. It was very easy for him to take the side of like, no, let's not kill this peacekeeper girl. Let's talk to her, which is continuing the trend of John Crichton being the guy who's like, hey, let's stop and think about this for a bit. So that's really swell. But then two parts stick out to me with that in mind. The first being when towards the end, when they're like, they've wired up these two plates, which I'm not even going to pretend to figure out how the pseudoscience works here.
Yeah.
But she's like, okay, if you touch these plates together, the whole world's going to vaporize, or the whole room's going to vaporize. And he's like, yeah, okay, I can keep them apart. And then the whole time I'm watching, I'm like, oh, just one slip and they're going to touch. And, oh, John, you're not really understanding the full implications of what vaporization means.
It feels like he's barely trying. Like, they come frequently close to just basically touching.
Yeah.
These two waffle irons that he's holding in his hands. And the aliens come through and they shoot fire at him. And he's like, whoa, I got blown backward. But hey, I still got these cool magnetic waffle irons to not touch.
Yeah.
You're like, oh my god, how are you not putting 100% of your effort in, like, sweating and, like, freaking out? Like, he just doesn't care, I feel like.
And then the other part that, I mean, they played it for comedic effect, and it's justified by his, romantic connection with Galena. It's the part at the end where she's leaving, and they're, like, making out, and Dargo's on the intercom, and he's like, Crichton, like, we gotta go. We gotta stop. We gotta get out of here.
I know this is your thing, but, like, bro, get it out.
Like, we're gonna all die if you don't stop.
He's like, hold on, I'm busy having a weird three-way love triangle. I need to wrap this plot up before we can save the day.
Yeah.
Which is, I guess, a negative of this episode to me, but it's also funny, so it doesn't detract.
That the plot had to be wrapped up?
No. That it felt like he didn't give a crap.
I mean, it just, like, it felt like he gave a crap about certain things, like this girl and Aaron's feelings.
Which
but he didn't give a crap about, like, life or death situations.
Right. And, God, continuing the trend of... So I don't feel like I say that phrase a lot. I'm going to try and get away from it.
It's sort of a trend of yours.
following up with the pattern of introducing aliens 1 week and then never using that race again. We're introduced to the Sheyang this week, and their whole thing is A, they look like frogs, and B, they barf fire.
Hey, can I blow your mind, dog?
Can you do that?
Hold on, let me just make sure that I'm actually going to blow your mind, and that I'm not.
My mind is prepared to be blown. Go for it.
You're complaining that these guys just like show up and then they leave?
Oh, do they come back?
No, guess what though?
What? Is this a spoiler?
The Sheyang made their first appearance on the Commerce Planet in Premiere, in the background talking to Zan. David Kemper had seen it and said, "Those are so cool, I'm going to write an episode for it."
I don't know if I hate you or David Kemper now. I'm trying to decide. David Kemper, it's like how every expanded universe comic is about, like, oh, check out that alien that was in the cantina. Like, check that one out, and that one, and that one.
Oh, also, they totally come back in season 2.
All right, well, it's fucking way to get rid of the whole thesis that I was about to drop on you. Take a hot dump on that. Okay.
Oh, so do the dudes from the One Thing.
Please explicate.
I don't remember.
This is good audio, dude.
Fuck off, dude.
Oh my god. It's getting real on episode 3.
But guys, it's not getting real. Now it's real. The dudes who kidnapped, what's his face? Fuck it, forget it.
Oh my god. You said nothing there. No words.
No, the guys who kidnapped Rigel. Those aliens,
okay,
with the gauntlets,
gauntlet people, got it. They come back.
I think they're coming back.
Well,
I saw a thumbnail that looked like their leader.
Excellent. Well, what I'm getting at is that they're introducing a new race every week.
Yeah, sure. Except that's not true for this episode because this race was in the first episode.
Oh, but they were in the background. You don't understand. I'm saying like they like fleshed them out. Like they have like an infinite like universe of weird puppet fleshy aliens to flesh it to.
Sure.
That's what I'm saying.
Yes.
And it's cool because it's space and they can just never stop doing that, which is great. It's like this show is its own expanded universe. It doesn't need to be like, hey, here's those aliens you saw in the background. They just make an episode about that. Anyways, speaking of those aliens that barf fire and look like frogs. I just like them because there's like infighting and they're supposed to just be like the generic grunt villains, and they have their whole like very cool, very small scale ships, and they have like a mutiny where and this kind of ties into the B plot a little bit, but a bunch like the leaders communicating with Dargo and Zahn on the Moya, and they're like, oh no, like the leader doesn't want to, he's like too scared to actually attack their ship. And then there's a mutiny, and then a guy kills him and takes over, and he's like, no, now we're going to attack the ship. And it adds this cool agency to the affairs, because it feels like the B plot in this episode is like keeping the A plot from going anywhere, if that makes sense. Like
going anywhere in the sense of keep making sure that it can keep happening.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which is exactly what's happening, because like we said, the A plot is John and PK Tech Girl and Aaron's son being sad together, and
they're fixing something for some reason.
They're fixing the ship so that they can leave her. Not that they can leave her there, but that they can like, oh, they want to fix the shields is what it was.
Okay.
Because there was this whole thing about there's 2-level shields, and we fixed one of them, so they destroyed that one, and if we don't fix the second one, then they're going to shoot down another ship. And they want to keep her alive by the end of the episode long enough so that Christ can take her, because they find out at the end that Christ is coming for Tech Girl, and if they don't leave, they have to leave her there and leave so that they don't know that they were there, because then they will brand her as a infected traitor.
Execute her, yeah.
Or they'll Aaron son her, basically.
Yeah.
And Aaron's son, so that basically just wraps up the theme of like Aaron's son is seeing the life that she could have lived through this girl, and being like, oh, I could have been like a cool peacekeeper person who like has like a posse that comes and saves my ass. But the B plot is, I liked it. I thought it was cute. Well, actually, there's like a B plot, and then there's like a very small, a very interesting C plot, but we'll get to that. B plot is that Dargo and Zahn are on a video Skype call, basically, with these froggy aliens, and they're trying to convince them not to attack. And so the way that they start it is that Dargo just gets really angry that they're there and that they exist. He starts yelling, and Zahn is like, turn the video on, and then they just get this clip, this like very zoomed in clip of Dargo's face just screaming. He's like, ah! And they're like, oh fuck, this we didn't know that there was like a crazy person on that ship. Oh my god.
Yeah.
And then they call back again, and they're like, hey, are you, like, the only person on your ship? And he's like, no, I have a huge crew. And they're like, no, you don't. And he's like, nah, guys, like, I totally do. And they're like, we don't think you do. We're going to come back in 5 minutes. And then that's when there's a mutiny, and they're like, nope, screw you. We're shooting everyone down. Mm-hmm. I just like this idea that Dargo and Zahn have a good enough relationship, like a relationship of respect enough that he can basically hand over, like for a while at least, hand over the logic reins to her, and she can be like, we're gonna use your power of aggression and intimidation to manipulate people, and she's like right off the corner, like right to the side, being like, now say this and now say that, and just feeding lines to him basically, and it's just kind of a cute, like it doesn't really. It doesn't progress anything, but it was like a good, interesting kind of way of extending the time limit on the A plot.
Yeah.
Because they say, like, oh, how much time until this thing explodes? And they're like, oh, several ohms. And I feel like we still don't know how long an ohm is. I thought it was supposed to be an hour. Arn, sorry. God.
It's comparable to an hour. I'm guessing it's probably a little shorter.
Right, because the wiki, I remember, it says approximately equal to 1 Earth hour. But don't they say, like, it'll take 8 Arns to fix the thing?
Yeah, and then they move through that. Well, no, because then Crichton is like, well, if I help, it'll take half the time.
So it took 4 hours?
Yeah, and, like, it still is quite a long time.
I think the implication is that, there's more happening on that ship than we see, like, a lot more. Mm-hmm. Which kind of makes the relationship make a little more sense. That he isn't there for like 20 minutes. He's actually there for like a while. But
yeah, like a work day.
Yeah, exactly. And that kind of makes it make a little more sense. So that's the B plot. I really want to talk about the C plot, though.
Okay. Which
is that, and it's so weird for a show to choose to do this. Because basically they're like, okay, we didn't have anything to do with Rigel this episode. So, actually, is this the one that started with the shot of Rigel's eye and it had like the ship burning in his eye, and then he was like,
yeah,
that was a gorgeous bit of cinematography. Fucking incredible that they used a puppet's eye to be like, hey, check out what's going on, and it's like, not played for comedy at all.
Yeah.
He's like, I got nothing to do, and then Zahn brushes him off, and she's like, you should, because he's like, oh, that ship is the first ship I was tortured on. Which is pretty dark. And she's like, you should go on there and confront your inner demons, because that's like how you become a better person in life. And this is a rare opportunity for you to better yourself. And he obliges, and he's like, sure, I'd be down for some self-improvement, I guess. Goes down to the ship, sees a vision of the guy who tortured him, which was like kind of scary because it's like shot all from Rigel's perspective, so it's like very low shots and very creepy. And the guy's like, "Oh, you're back. I knew you'd always come back." And it doesn't like, he doesn't like go through a lot of adversity other than like, it's all internalized, which is why I think you should do with Rigel is to instead of make it be like, oh, he had to fight off demons or like, he had to go walk through a crazy hallway. It's entirely implied that he came to grips with that part of his past and then got the sort of closure that he always wanted. And he saw the burnt, very dead body of the guy who tortured him in like a chair, like laying back, all relaxed. And he's like, "Hey, man!" He just spits on him.
Well, part of it is that guy had killed himself.
Oh, why was that?
Huh?
Why did he have to kill himself?
I think because the ship was being taken over by
those aliens.
Whatever caused that issue.
Exactly.
And so Rigel was like, you killed yourself, you coward. I got off your torture ship, Patui.
Which is the second time that Rigel spit in this episode.
Yes.
I sound like the Buffy wiki continuity or something. That's a joke no one gets. The first time is that he spits on PK Tech Girl. He's like, ew, peacekeeper, Patui. I don't know, I like Rigel a lot, and I was really happy that he got this.
I always feel, whenever something bad happens to Rigel, I always feel worse than when something bad happens to another character. Because he's so cute.
He's adorable, and he's got his huge eyebrows, which get almost plucked off in the second episode. And he has no way of defending himself. Like, he's just a man, or he's just a thing in a chair.
Yeah.
And he just flies around and goes on adventures, and he doesn't have to, like, fall in love or be gendered necessarily. Like, he's just a fucking guy who exists and has a past that bothers him. And we were talking last week about how, like, the worst Rigel stuff is when they try to, like, use him and physically use him. Mm-hmm. Like when he's in that bag in the Gauntlet episode, or when he is CG walking across a room. And it's like, no, like, he gets 2 scenes in this episode. He gets to see the vision of the guy, and then he gets to spit on the guy's dead body, if I'm not mistaken.
I believe that's correct.
And that's a beautiful way to handle such a potentially complex character. It's like, good on you guys. You guys are doing good work.
Yeah. What else happens?
That's most of it.
That's most of it. Can I tell you my favorite part now?
Please do.
So they somehow win. I wasn't keeping very good track of the plot, like the technical plot of this episode.
Right.
But they win, and they're like, okay, PK Tech Girl, like your crew's coming back to get you, so we got to leave you here. My favorite part, easily, was when Aaron was like, okay, like, goodbye now. And then Galena just stretched out her hand, and they held hands, and Aaron, like, fought back tears.
Oh my god, that was the scene, dude.
And that was it.
I forgot about that scene. Holy shit.
Like, that was so good.
It says so much and like, physically says so little. Or literally, I guess. Because it's this, like, moment of physical contact with the life that you once knew. It's the life that you could have had. And it's this, like, mutual respect that they could have very easily just ignored and been like, all right, you were the competition, now screw you, get out of here. But instead they're like, no, like, you know, we have a mutual bond. And it's
and there's the idea that, you know, Galena's like, I'm gonna go back and I'm gonna live this life for both of us, basically.
Right. Christ is gonna get me, and I'm gonna become a cool I'm gonna continue to be, like, a good person a good peacekeeper, basically.
Yeah.
And it's beautiful. It's all the character moments for a show that's, like, about aliens and goopy space guns and crap. It's like, the character moments stick with you.
Yeah.
And that's very intentional, obviously, but I love it.
Yeah. And then I really liked the rest of the end. I thought it was a little dumb, the way it was handled, pacing wise, because you get such a fantastic conversation between Crichton and Galena, where it's like, just a lot of his lines are really cool in there. Like, oh, are you free this weekend? Ha ha ha, I'm John Crichton. I don't know if we need to come up with a term to describe, not his anachronisms, because that's not the word, but they're like spatial anachronisms, you know what I mean?
How so? Like the references to things they don't.
Like, he's just referencing things that nobody would understand. Like, there's got to be a term for that.
That's
besides. Anyway, but that scene where they're saying goodbye to each other is it's just really good. And then the door closes, and you're like, oh man, all right, good end to the episode. And then it, like, cuts back to him outside the door, and then it fades out, and you're like,
that was such an awkward cut. Yeah,
that was so awkward. And then it fades back in to him talking to Aaron. And the only way I can explain that awkward cut is they didn't want people to think it was the end of the episode, because, like, that fade implies that they probably cut to commercial, right?
Yes.
And so they didn't want people to be like, episode's over, and miss the, like, 5 more minutes at the end.
It's very weird, and I think that could have been handled better, just because the way that scene should have worked in, like, physical space is lady closes the door, then we cut to Crichton looking at the door, and then we fade to black, and it's the final scene. Because I don't think the final scene warrants its own cut to commercial and then cut back. It's, like, not substantive enough for that.
Well, I think, like, it might just be the way that hour block is parceled out.
Right, I'm saying in a perfect world where they could edit the show however they wanted, that's where they would have cut it, is at the end of the episode, not after the first.
Well, maybe. I mean, the other stuff happens chronologically after that moment.
That's true. There is a time gap.
I think just the easy fix would have been to not see the door closing from the inside. It would have been to see the door close from behind Crichton.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense. Huh. Let's redirect the show.
Don't know why they didn't just do that. But maybe they didn't have that footage. I don't know. Anyway, so that was, you know, pacing and editing wise a little strange. But otherwise, I just love the content of the end. And the cute little hey bit.
Oh, yes.
They had. Just good
writing. He says hey, and then she's like, I don't understand what that word means. And he's like, what does he say? He's like, people use it on Earth to, like, see if the other person, like they try to start, if the other person wants to start a conversation, and then if the other person says hey, then they don't want to talk, and then she goes hey, and he's like and he goes no, but you can override it. Like he basically gives like the chess rule book of saying hey, and he's like no, but if I want to talk because we have to, then it'll work like this. And it's a really good like reminder that they are from different worlds. And you were talking earlier about his pop culture references. Like, he makes a Titanic reference earlier in the episode. Mm-hmm. He says, like, oh, just ask Leonardo DiCaprio, the ship goes down. And you're like, that came out, like, a year before this. Like, maybe 2. That's a very weird thing for you to reference.
Yeah.
But I guess if we're to remember that his past is our future, like, if his stuff didn't take place in 99 before he went through the jump.
What do you mean?
Remember how we were like, maybe before he went through the jump, like when he was working for the IASA, like that wasn't necessarily in 99?
I think it was meant to be.
Okay. I think that makes sense then. Maybe I was misremembering something. What was I going to say? Yeah, there's that, and then there's at the end where he says, when you were saying like he talks to Tech Girl and makes another reference. I like his little moments like that. It reminds us that he comes from a different time and place. What's up?
That's all I got for PK Tech Girl, I think.
There was I skimmed the background information this episode. I bit the bullet and did it. I noticed that there was a lot of ADR in this episode, because a lot of it felt like aliens, like visually, like the scene where Aaron's son is going through the place, and she finds the burnt body, and she like opens her flashlight on it, and she's like, this guy shouldn't be here, and she's there, and then there's that really sad line where Tech Girl is like, yeah, everybody got demoted when you left, and they don't get to get re-promoted until you die. And then she's like kind of bummed, because he's like, yeah, I'm kind of the reason he's dead, but like also not my fault.
Yeah, like that's a bullshit system.
Yes.
It's still, it's really sad.
It's that, and like that whole scene felt very Aliens, because she's holding a like holster a bigger pulse rifle, I'm assuming because she didn't ever get her old one back, and she's straight up wearing Ripley's like overalls, like white shirt and overalls, which I was like, that's such a weird, like very deliberate homage. It did the whole like
the grating on the floor and stuff, and just the way the light was used did feel very Aliens to me as well.
Yeah.
And I haven't even seen Aliens. Yeah.
You have to. Also, what's that lovely beeping in the background?
I don't know, but I really like it.
Let's keep it. It's good. It adds to the mood. I just wanted to pick out one real quick piece of trivia. I'm just going to read this. This is from the wiki. Claudia Black had to redub her lines after she interrupted Crichton and Galena, which, I mean, I noticed a lot. There was a ton of ADR lines when she wasn't looking at the camera. And there's a quote from her from Farscape, the Illustrated Companion, and it's... I was able to fix the scene in post-production. I'm not even going to attempt her accent. And was able to create the moment of vulnerability. When I had to lift the heavy object, I needed to physicalize it in the ADR booth. So I actually lifted Tony Tilsa as my heavy object as I recorded that line. She just picked up the director like, oh, I love that Claudia Black was a badass in real life. That's the best. Makes me so happy. I think that's everything, though, about his PK Tech Girl.
Yeah, good episode.
Very good episode.
I think it's probably one of, maybe not my favorite so far, but definitely up there.
It's an early one for me.
Definitely in the top 5 of the first 6 episodes we've watched.
Okay. I don't know how you picked that out, but...
Let's put it that way.
I think I really, really liked the second episode. Hey, segue.
Wow. What was it called?
Oh, thank God it's Friday. Again!
Good.
Oh, man. This episode aired January 17th, 2000 in the UK, and April 23rd, 99 in the US. And Magellan, guess what?
Chicken butt.
It was written by David Wilkes and directed by Rowan Woods.
No shit.
Yeah, Rowan Woods. Shut up. Rowan Woods is a very Australian name, and also he did Back and Back and Back to the Future. So we are already, me naming out the directors is already paying off. In terms of
paying off.
Finally, it's not the word I'm looking for.
It's just a very generous way to describe this.
I like doing it. It's a good way to chronicle.
No, I like it too. Let's just move on.
Thank God It's Friday again is continuing the trend of having one episode a week be primarily on the ship and on one other ship, and then the second episode being primarily an off-planet affair or off-ship affair. So
which I like. I think that's a good balance.
I do too, because I think when you end up with too many episodes off ship, you end up in like weird CG territory, because there was some weird CG in both these episodes, but especially the second one. And you get a chance to like introduce entire groups of people and like entire cultures, whereas when it's on ship, it's like, oh, here's a weird thing that's infecting the crew, instead of like, here's a weird problem that the crew needs to fix.
Yeah. Which
led to one of my major problems with the second episode. But what did you think of this episode overall?
I really liked it. I had some... So there were a lot of very important character development moments for me, which made me like this episode. But the like people on the planet, I had some not issues, but like kind of questions. There's some weirdness about it. I'm gonna lay it all on the table. Were they Chinese?
I'm gonna be frank with you.
Like that's what the thing was, right?
Well, that's what the like architecture and their like culture,
their garb,
like, their farming, like a lot of it.
The communism.
Yes, that's kind of the primary metaphor of the episode, I guess.
Right. So would you agree that they might or might not be Chinese?
I think they're based on East Asian cultures.
Okay, can I say something from the background information that makes that weirder?
Okay.
So the episode initially had a lot of railway type themes. But once the episode was edited, there was less footage of trains and more of an emphasis on the Balinese influence. I'm gonna look up what that word means.
Is that like Bali? I might be racist. Hold on.
That might be right.
This is good. Also good audio.
Balinese people. It's an Indonesian island.
Oh, so they were pulling from something very specific.
Okay.
That's why I said East Asian. I was like, if you specify, then you're getting into weird territory. Also, if they fucking brought in trains, oh my god.
That would have been like...
Not okay?
Well, it wouldn't have been not okay. It would have been just so explicit.
Yes. I like the way they handled it. I thought it was like, ambiguous enough.
Yeah. I think there was just like, if you really want to dig into this episode, there's some weird racial... stuff going on.
Absolutely.
Because their leader is like the only white one also.
And they're saved by a white man. All right, let's get into it, because I wanted to talk about this too. This is exactly what I was complaining to you about while watching it.
Yeah.
So basically, the way this episode starts is like it's atypical for what we've already seen. Because it does this really funny thing where instead of just being like, here's a weird thing that everybody noticed, let's go investigate. It's like, okay, so the whole like first 5 minutes is the viewer being caught up on what's happening in the world right now. Mm-hmm. So they're basically like, okay, Dargo thinks John Creighton is dead. 3 days ago, he fell into what's called Luxon hyperrage, which I guess just means that he's like having a ridiculous hissy fit for like a long period of time and is very violent.
Look it up because I was so confused when the episode started.
Luxon hyperrage occurred when a Luxon such as Dargo was overwhelmed by extreme anger. It happened naturally and took years of training to manage properly.
Appear to be a biological feature. No female Luxons ever. Here's the thing that was weird is that it was just that Dargo was mad about like having male competition.
I mean,
on the ship.
What was that episode that ended where they were like, women, right? So this is basically the continuation of that episode?
So what does this episode come after? Maybe that.
I don't literally.
Oh, so this comes right after Back and Back to the Future,
which is the episode that ended with them being like, "Oh, women."
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I was joking, but I guess that works. I think.
Is that what that is? That's just weird.
I think it's just really a really clumsy way to like get Dargo off the ship.
Yeah, like you could just say like Dargo wanted to take a vacation, so he's on the planet.
And he's gone for 3 days. 3 days. They were like, This is one of my biggest problems with this episode is that it like doesn't know how to deal with how much time is passing in any particular moment. So it's like, Dargo is on the planet for 3 days and we didn't go bother him. So we were like, oh, that's weird. And John pretended to be dead for 3 days. And then
yeah. And Aaron was like, yeah, we tried to tell you he was gone. We couldn't find you. Like, really? Call him on the intercom thing.
It's like this weird, like, you have so much technology and you couldn't just, I don't know, make him
Or just be like, hey, pilot, do you sense his, like, biosignature? And then pilot's like, yes, it's right there.
Good pilot impression, by the way.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's so weird. And then Dargo's like, I'm going to vent my frustration on the cute little vacuum droid, the Roombas.
Yeah.
Which are apparently called DRDs, which I love.
That's great.
They're my favorite thing. I
just thought of 2 problems that I had with the episode, by the way.
We'll get to them.
Okay, yeah.
I'll pause between plot points and see if you want to yell at me.
I'm just trying to remember what they are now.
Just hold them in there.
Okay, I got them.
Okay, good.
Yeah, sorry. Go.
That was good work. John comes out of hiding, and they're like, let's go see what he's up to. Like, let's actually like go visit this guy who's like essential to our group. And they go down, and they're on this like cool nightclub. But I love the line where they're like, wait, it's like nighttime, but it's really bright. And he's like, oh, it's like a white night thing. Like, it's not. Like, you have to know what white nights are to understand that reference.
Yeah, I didn't.
Do you not know what white nights are?
No, what's a white night?
White night is a concept that I learned from like a poem or a book by it's like a Dostoevsky book, I think, called White Nights, that I had to read in a class. Wow, that is a cool thing a reference that I can pull, by the way. Holy shit. It's a thing in, I can't remember which country, but it's one of those things where because they're so close to the equator, like their summer and like winter like lengths are off, so they have like one day a year where, I think it's one day a year, or maybe it's an entire year, I can't remember, where it never goes dark.
Oh.
Like, that's a thing that really exists in real life.
Right. I mean, that happens in like Alaska and stuff.
Yeah. In a bunch of places. And I think it's in Iceland is where I might know of it. I don't know.
Gotcha.
I don't want to just spout bullshit. The point is that it's always like they get nighttime, but they don't. Basically, all it is we get to say it's a nightclub, but we don't have to light it to be dark. Like, we don't have to do dark lighting.
Yeah, it can always be daytime.
We can always use the best artificial light on the show because that's easy.
But you just know that in the writer's room, they're like, okay, we get to use this excuse once. Not every planet can have this happen. Is this episode worth it? And they're like, yeah, half of it's at nighttime.
And the the composition of the planet that this is on, it really does. I don't know why there's so much like time spent on talking about it. Like, why does this planet have really hot mornings? And so is that just so that what's her face, Aaron's son, has to get off? Is that the only reason?
Yeah, I guess that makes sense.
That's so contrived.
Yeah, I mean the whole thing's contrived.
I think if I tried to dig too much into that,
inventing this planet,
right? It's all sci-fi. That it doesn't have to apply to any sort of reality.
Yeah.
God, this episode is weird. We're gonna get into the weird stuff right now. Basically, they go to this party, and then there's this great part where Dargo is like, "Oh man, it's crazy here. All the girls like think I'm super sexy, and I'm like gonna stay here, and I love it." And then Aaron's son's like, "All right, he wants to stay here. Can we leave? Like, we don't need to keep him."
Yeah.
Like, we don't, like, in a realistic sense, we don't need him. He's only here because he was a prisoner with us.
Here's one of my 2 problems.
Here you go.
With this episode. And really, it's a problem with the show as it stands right now that's just exposed by that moment.
Yeah.
Of, like, why are they together?
Exactly.
At all? Why can't they just be like, oh, good, Dargo's happy. Bye, Dargo. That makes sense.
So you're going to get into my biggest problem with the episode. Look at this. This is an episode full of problems. I love it. But it's like weirdly good.
Yeah.
I think it's implied that they're starting to like each other and that they want to, like, they have this like familial bond, and they're like, okay, sure. It benefits us all that we stay together. And we've learned that Dargo is useful to the crew and has an interesting life and set of skills. But Aaron's son is so immediately, it's almost like negative against her and also negative against John Crichton in that scene. Because she's like, oh, we don't need him. And you're like, yeah. And then John Crichton's like, no, wait, what? Like, why would we get rid of him? And he's basically just saying, we can't get him off the cast yet. It's like, why don't they get off to Gilligan's Island?
Yeah.
It's that, basically. It's like, wait, his reasoning is like, no, but he's like cool. Like, we like him. He doesn't have any good reason.
Right, exactly.
And that's forced. But then that forces the, like, plot to go forward where they're like, oh, Dargo seems really not cool. Like, it seems really weird that he says, like, he's been working on this planet. He has, like, a job now, and he's, like, going to go off with this really cool lady. And then they meet Volme, who's, like, the leader of this planet, I guess. Mm-hmm. And she has hair that looks like beads and looks like Helen Mirren. So
she looked cool.
with her whole red eyes thing and like weird hair.
Yeah, just her whole thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
I liked her. I liked her performance too.
My only problem with her performance is that her whole affectation is that she speaks very slowly.
Yeah.
Like she just speaks deliberately, and it sounds like she is someone who doesn't speak English as a first language, which is like a little weird.
I know, but I kind of liked that.
Yes.
I kind of like it made her seem really naive, which is perfect for where the episode goes.
Right, because the episode starts to be like, oh, she's like the biggest leader and like owns this whole planet, and then very quickly she's like, I own nothing. I work for everyone. I work for the man.
It's just, it's a thing that I am consistently loving about Farscape, where they set up science fiction scenarios that you're like, I've seen this before. I get how it is. This is a thing where all the workers are happy so that they can work and they can make stuff for her, and like that's it, and she's evil. And then Farscape is like, but what if she's dumb? Did you think about that?
What if she's like really weird and just doesn't know what's going on?
What if she's kind of just like a child mentally,
essentially,
in terms of her understanding of space?
Yes.
You. And then you're like, Farscape, I don't know what to think anymore.
I have a Woody and I don't know what to do about it. What a line.
That was a great line.
I have a Woody. And that's like a classic weird space lady says a line and he's like, no, you mean
Willie. Although that again raises the question of how the translator works.
Don't question it. You can't. I know you love to question things, and that's what you live for. But the translator will break you if you keep doing that.
I know, but like, it's just, it can't be possible that her mispronunciation happens the same way in both English and this other language.
Exactly.
I don't know, because she should just be making the sounds of whatever wrong word it is, and never mind.
You're losing me, man.
Okay, so in her head, as a peacekeeper...
No, I meant like you're losing me, like stop talking about this, but go ahead.
Yeah, okay. Okay, forget it.
Keep that in your mind as the show goes on and tell me...
It doesn't hold under...
Scrutiny.
Or it like kinda does. Like it kinda works. To the point, it works well enough that you can ignore it in the moment, but I just find it... Like, I find languages really interesting. And for a show that, as we've been saying, it's so important for the characters to communicate, to solve their problems, as the end of this episode shows, I just like to investigate the way in which people are even able to communicate with each other.
Right, and it's absolutely valid. I forget it every single week. And then you mention them like,
I mean, that's what they want, is for us to forget it.
So forget that. Hey, the voice on the loudspeaker, which I love 1984 style, like dystopic loudspeaker characters. And this one was so unsatisfying because it's almost never hearable. Audible, yeah. Like in this scene, it's like, oh, the day's over, time to go, because tomorrow's the rest day. And it's hearable here, but there's later a scene when they're like ingrained in the culture, and it's saying something like, obey, your work is good, do your work. But you can barely hear any of it. And it's like...
I wish we had just gotten one clean version of like the spiel.
Yeah, because it's looping. And you're like, could I have heard it once? That would have been nice, but whatever. It's probably... You know what it's saying. Like you...
Because you don't even get that there is a root, that they're all eating the same food until way later.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't get that was what... Well, I knew that was what was going on because I read the Netflix summary, but I didn't understand what it looked like in episode until after John had the worm in him, and they were like, eat that root.
That was a cool scene. We'll get to that real quickly. I just wanted to talk about how they all go home, and then the best B plot ever. Oh, it's kind of... I mean, it ties into the A plot in a way. Rigel is like, I gotta go take a quick piss because we're at a club, and this is what you do in the back of a club. And he goes and pees. And then this is another weird, like, this episode doesn't know how to deal with time passing. And I might just be looking into this too much, but he goes to pee and then explodes, or he, like, sees an explosion. And he's like, oh my God, there was an attempt on my life. There was a bomb threat. But it, like, happened 1 second ago. And it makes it sound like he's recounting it to them, even though they were, like, just there. I don't know. It was a weird, like, thing to
I mean, that's what he's saying. He's like, oh, there was an explosion. Just here, just now.
Okay, well, I guess that makes more sense then.
It tickles me that Rigel, this very regal figure, it goes out back to take a leak.
Right, and
That's funny.
I like to think of him as the character of like the King After Hours. If you imagine him like that, like what do celebrities that we love or like kings and queens do when we're not watching them? And it's like that's what Rigel does. Is he goes on vision quests in abandoned spaceships, or he goes to go pee and finds out that his pee is explosive. And
don't give away the farm. We want to build to that.
Well, okay, yeah. So he just goes, "Oh, there's a weird explosion. Let's go figure this out. That's weird." Which becomes the B plot, I guess. Dargo is like, "Yo, you guys can like stay at my house if you want." And so Aaron's son leaves because it's hot, and so we're left with John Crichton and Zahn or Zan. They say both. I confirm they say both.
Yeah.
They also say Christ and Kreese, so there's no right way to say anything on this show. John Crichton is his name. No, but they're like, there's like one bed and it's very low to the ground, and Dargo's like, I'm gonna go in the back and have weird acrobatic sex with my acrobatic girlfriend. She like bends backwards, and that's the implication that they're gonna have sex, I guess.
Yeah.
Question mark.
That was weird. So was that just a total red herring? And forgive my use of the word red. Or don't forgive it because it's hilariously appropriate. Mm-hmm. The fact that she's like kind of a sultry in like a suspicious way.
I think that was a red herring. I think it's supposed to imply that there's something weird going on.
Right, but it implied that she... Like, my guess at the beginning was like, oh, okay, there's a group of these people who are enslaving everyone else somehow with their, like, sexual wiles.
And it's way less interesting than that.
Or, well, it's not less interesting.
I mean, it's very different than that.
Yeah, it's way more broad than that.
I think the like actual reveal in this episode is very... I can't think of which sci-fi like property I'm thinking of, be it like Total Recall or Minority Report or one of those things where it's like, oh, everything's normal, but wait, turns out everything's fucking bad.
This felt very Star Trek-y to me for a reason that ties into one of my problems, my second problem, which I don't know if we want to jump into yet or not. Do we? Because it ties into the part where he gets the worm stuck in him.
Well, okay, so we can just jump to that. Because basically, yeah, John and Zahn have a real dumb, like, weird comedy, sex comedy thing. Jay-Z have... Oh, my God, that's good. That's actually good. Have a moment where they're like, oh, we can't sleep in bed together. And she's like, no, it won't be weird. Like, I'm cool. And then he wakes up and her hand's on his Tinky Winky. And he's like, oh, this is weird. Lala.
I am so glad I got to see in real time you go through a number of options and then choose Tinky Winky.
You got to hear the roulette wheel go.
Yeah.
You've landed on Tinky Winky. It's my penis wheel. The like selector is actually my penis. Anyways,
this keeps hitting the pegs. You're like, ow, ow, ow.
But John, this is a show that I want to like maybe be able to release to people. You know that, like someday.
You gotta tell me the rules then.
I mean, like, I don't know, talk like you're cool. But let's pretend we're cool and we don't just make dick jokes and fart jokes.
Okay, listen, you're the one who put your dick on the Wheel of Fortune. I just took it to its logical extreme. Dickstream.
And so right there, thank you.
Speaking of dickstreams, I wish we were about to talk about the end of the episode because that would have been the segue.
That's good. I'm just going to say that you just gave me my introduction, like pre-episode quote. Everything you just said.
Oh, no.
Just to jump ahead, Aaron and Pilot are like, we're going to work on some tests. And then Dargo and everyone go to work in the fields. And what's her face? Zahn who's usually the like, I'm going to save the day with my logic and compassion, ends up being like, I love what happens to her, actually. The more I think about it, because it's instead of her being like, oh, she's so nice and compassionate and like, oh no, now she's infected and she's going to be like really stupid or like really evil. She's just like, it almost makes sense that she's like, you know what? This is like really chill. I could just like work in the fields forever.
Yeah.
Like I'm complacent. Sorry, that's bad sound. She's like, I could just be complacent and that would be fine. And that almost makes sense, except for the part where she says she wants to work there forever.
Yeah.
But John is with them and he's like, this is weird. I guess I'll play along. And then he gets dragged away to like a comical caravan where an attractive lady is like, yeah, let's go like hang out. And then he gets choked from behind. Or not choked from behind. He gets grabbed from behind by an older man and his buddies. And they stick a worm in his stomach.
Yeah.
And then he passes out, and they're like, "Don't forget to eat. Bye." So, what's your problem with that?
Okay, so it isn't like this episode isn't the worst example of this, but it felt Star Trek-y to me in the sense of like I haven't seen really any Star Trek episodes, but I'm familiar with the concept of the Prime Directive, right?
Yes.
Which is the idea that you're not supposed to interfere with a planet's culture or technology, right?
John, I'm proud of you.
Well, okay.
A, for getting that, and B, for segueing into what I was going to talk about. So let's go talk about it.
So, and then on Star Trek, they'll like break the Prime Directive because it's like, no, like we gotta honor rights and stuff. And it always feels very white man's burden-y and like very Western civilization is the best civilization. Let's impose that on other cultures kind of thing. Which is what it felt like here, almost, except the culture is like forcing John Crichton to force himself to impose himself on them.
They're putting him into a situation where he has to help them.
Right. Which made it more interesting, but it was still there were still tinges of that very Western, I don't want to say American because it's an Australian show, but very Western conception of like these people are not able to exercise their free will. Like they are being enslaved. Like it's not fair that they don't have the freedom of choice. But if they're all happy with it, it's kind of, or most of them are happy. And then there's this subsection of them who aren't happy because it doesn't work on them. Not because it's unjust, but because it like the thing doesn't work. Yeah. And like, yeah, their world's going to shit, I guess. I don't know. It was weird to me.
It's 100. As soon as you realize that this episode is 100% a metaphor for like colonization and abuse of cultures that are presumed to be inferior and are easily dominated, it falls apart so quickly because if that's supposed to be sort of like a Matrix level of like the world is screwed up and we're here to fix it for you, and he's like, wait, what? And he becomes the savior for them. But like, why didn't they get Zahn? Is it just because she very quickly was okay with like complacency? And like, why is he immune? Is it because he's human?
Well, no, they stuck the worm in him. That's why.
So why didn't they stick the worm in anyone else?
Yeah, I don't know. Why didn't they stick the worm in Dargo?
Why didn't they stick the worm in Dargo or Zahn or anyone else that was on the planet?
I mean, John Crichton's the main character.
That's bullshit, though.
Yeah, well, yeah.
And my biggest problem is that they don't explain why they even need him until the last, like, 10 minutes of the episode. Where they're like, he's like, by the way, why do you guys even need me to help? And they're like, we want you to, like, use your ship or something to, like, give us weapons. And use your cool magical space powers to help us take over.
Because when he first walks by that girl, she's like, whatever you do, don't leave. And it's like, okay, so he's not supposed to leave. And then they stick the worm in him. And he's still got it in his head like, I'm not supposed to leave the planet because something bad's going to happen. And then they're like, could you go pick us up some guns?
Yeah, they're basically like, could you go down to the Safeway and get us like an AK and like a couple M16s and we'll like...
They feel like kids hanging outside a liquor store.
Buying us alcohol.
It's like, yeah, could you go in and buy us some power?
Basically. But I have so many like ethical problems with where this episode goes because of that.
Right. But do you have problems with the ethics of the episode or with the ethics of characters within the episode?
That's a good question.
Because that's two different
Well, I think I have problems with the ethics of the episode because I feel like the end of the episode implies something really weird about sort of how power is reacquired and how rebellions can function.
Yeah. Just
because that's a very contemporary issue to think about.
Yeah.
So basically, just to kind of go accelerate through this plot, they find out that the peacekeepers they planted the drugs on this planet. The drugs?
The tannet root.
Thank you. And they're going to make everyone pick the tannet root and then use it to make the stuff that makes Rigel's pea explosive to make their ammunition for all of their guns. Right. And so they're basically sucking this planet's resources and people dry to make their weapons. And they're like, that's screwed up, and like, you shouldn't do that. And so how do they solve the problem? They go, hey, all basically Crichton says is, hey, guys, here's your... am I right that all he does is say, like, use your own weapons against them? Like, use your tannet root to make guns?
Yeah.
That's fucked, dude.
Why is that fucked?
Because he's saying, like, I don't know, the way that you save yourselves, the way that I'm going to save you is telling you to save yourselves, and I'm just going to step out and put the power in your hands to. But they don't save themselves through like diplomacy or through like their own means. Or like he doesn't like give them anything. It almost feels like he never needed to be there, and he just needed to tell them like, hey guys, you have the capability to kill your aggressors. Go do what they're doing.
But that's, I mean, yeah, I see what you're saying. But they just didn't know that. Otherwise, they probably wouldn't have been making the route. Like, they needed somebody to tell them, hey, these make guns, in order to be like, hey, we can make some guns and do this thing. And there is a diplomatic solution because, he convinces the leader person to fight alongside her people and to not leave for her own benefit and just, leave them high and dry, basically. So there is still a diplomatic solution to it. My issue with it is the assumption that, which the episode dodges, I think, by including the detail about the peacekeepers, because normally the way this could go is, John Crichton would just stand up there and be like, these roots are what make you think that you're happy. Like, you need to not eat these roots anymore because it's not real, right? This idea of something not being real.
Right.
And usually that's enough in sci-fi shows to say like, oh, if it's not real, we shouldn't be doing it. And so I'm thankful that at least Farscape didn't go that route and say like, oh, you're right, white man, like we need to fight for our own civil rights and stuff because that's the values that we all hold so dear. And instead he's like, hey, you can be happy, but in a larger galactic context, you're getting people killed, so that's not cool. So I appreciate that. But yeah, it does seem weird because he's being put in a position where you would expect him to be the savior figure, and you don't want him to be necessarily, but that's where the episode's putting him, and then he doesn't really save them. And so it does feel kind of paternalistic.
That's the word.
Yeah.
It's totally him breaking the non-existent in this show prime directive of like, you don't know if the peacekeepers or these people are in the right. Like, you don't know who's better off in this situation and who should actually be in power. We can assume that these people, like, these are the underdogs, so we're going to help them out, and that's like the reason that he helps them out. And it's unfair to wreck someone's planet, yes, but you don't know what the peacekeepers' like overall goals are, and I don't know, it's still like something just bugs me about the like hand the rebels their weapons and be like, hey, now you have weapons too.
Because, okay, so here's the thing, right, is we're trading in the traditional sci-fi thing of, basically, this society is communist, okay? Yeah. Let's just put it out there.
Okay.
The way that it's being shown to us is probably a communist allegory. Most sci-fi shows would be like, communism's bad. You need to fight against communism and be something else. And they're like, yeah, that's great. And Farscape instead is like, no, that's not really what we're saying. What we're saying is that you're fueling a fascist dictatorship, and fascism is bad. So fight that, guys. So it's really just taking one Western sociopolitical paradigm and trading it in for another Western sociopolitical paradigm.
I think you nailed it.
And that's what makes this episode's takeaways weirdly, like, yeah.
Uncomfortable.
Yeah. Okay, guys.
And I think that's interesting because you don't have to make John Crichton's end takeaway be good. It doesn't have to be like, oh, and I think this, and it doesn't have to be this necessarily like very benefits all, greater common good sort of thing. Like you can just say like he made a not great decision there, and he's arguing for a bad thing, because not all art has to promote good ideas. It can promote bad ideas as long as that's clear.
Right. Like, I'm fine with John Crichton arguing from a Western standpoint or from an American standpoint, because he's an American guy.
Yes.
And that's what he's got, is his culture and his belief system. And so he has to cling to it and fight for it that much harder in a universe that doesn't support it. But at the same time, part of the point of putting this character into this universe is not to say, Western American values are always right, but it's to say, if we take those values out of context, out of, Earth context, and put them in conversation with other values in this sort of, dissociated alien world, maybe we'll find some stuff that we have wrong, or that we don't really fully understand. And so this episode kind of challenged it, but kind of didn't.
I think that this episode leaves me hoping that this show can take this sort of alien-human colonialism relationship in a more deep and meaningful direction than it did here.
Yeah. I think it was just like a lot of big stuff that it's trying to tackle here that it just kind of mishandles.
Definitely. And there's subtlety to some of it, like the scene where who's the lady, Volme, is like, "Oh, I need you to help me," and I'm like really childish and like I'm not controlling this, and the others control me,
right?
And that's enough to be like, okay, the others are the bad guys. But then he looks up real quickly, and there's like a 2-second shot of the peacekeeper flags.
Yeah.
And it's not obvious that those are peacekeeper flags unless you remember what peacekeepers look like or what their flag looks like, and you're like, oh, that's interesting that there's aspects of the universe that aren't immediately spelled out, but. Like, yeah, the symbolism of the episode is awkwardly handled, I think.
I think part of it is we need to learn more about the Peacekeepers, because I'm not really content with just saying, like, oh, they're bad.
Especially if we're going to keep making the Star Trek and Mass Effect connections in this show, because there are no bad guys in those shows.
Yeah.
Or in Mass Effect, the game series, and Star Trek, the television series of series. The Borg are not inherently bad. They are just monolithic, like everyone has a method to their madness. And right now it just feels like the Peacekeepers are an evil faction of a neutral race, which is a very weird thing to do. Do you want to talk about... Okay, go ahead.
Well, while we're on this, I just want to talk about the one moment that kind of saves this a little bit, which is part of the end bit where it's like, hey, Farscape Reflections time. And Zahn, I'm going to say Zahn, I like it better that way.
Go for it.
Zahn and Dargo are talking, and Dargo's like, maybe I'm never supposed to be happy. And she's like, well, you were happy. And he's like, but it wasn't real. And she's like, what the fuck does real mean, dude? Like, come on. You were happy, which I thought was pretty cool.
It continues the trend of Zan... It continues the trend of Zan being able to, like, pluck a good feeling out of a bad situation.
Yeah.
Because she comes at him and she's like, well, that was crazy. And I was like kind of possessed by like not evil, but like, mind altering substances. And that's messed up. But I was like content and that's cool. And he's like, but it wasn't real. And she's like, she has that really beautiful quote that I don't remember exactly. Oh, here it is. It's actually on the wiki. There are no guarantees, Dargo. We take each breath as if it is our last and hope that the air is sweet. Oh.
Yeah.
Oh. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
So good. And that's the end of the episode, is Zahn reassures Dargo that he can build such a dream for himself. Like, and then it cuts to, you were talking about this with me before I watched these. This show has a really bad problem with like ending on like a really beautiful note and then cutting to its stupid like like end credits opening and then cut to the beginning of the awkward theme song, and it just it kills every moment, every ending.
It really, really does.
It never works.
Because it always cuts off another piece of music.
Yes.
It's another like very ambient, pleasant It's
like a Pokemon battle in the middle of a really emotional scene of life.
So that was a great character moment.
I think the other best stuff, I know we're going to talk about the same thing right now. I know that.
Yeah, so you do it.
This episode, if it's not great for its sort of opinions about what the whole thing with John Crichton's plot, what it does get right is character development. And I think both of our favorite little bits was the B plot of this episode. Which is it continues the trend of the other episode where Rigel, his whole story is that he discovers something about himself, is that Aaron's son on the Moya is hanging out with Pilot, and she has Rigel in the corner under his gold terry cloth blanket that I'm obsessed with, which appears every single week that we watch. It comes in once, and I love it. And he's all gross and sad, and they're like, we gotta cure him. And she tries to cure him and puts him into cryogenic stasis to sort of freeze him and stop him from peeing himself to death. And she's like, I don't know how computers work. I don't know how science works, and I don't know how to do research. Like, this is not my forte. Like, Pilot, this is all you, man. And then Pilot is like, you act like I know what I'm doing, basically.
Yeah.
And she's like, wait, what do you mean? He's like, I have been guessing this whole time. Like, the only reason I'm doing anything successfully is I read a lot. Like, I have time because I'm a installation in this ship. And so I know everything about the ship. I don't know everything about diseases or human interactions or anything. all I have is time and books. So you and I have equal opportunities to learn this. Like the sort of delta between you being able to cure him and me being able to cure him is zero. So you should just try and sort of explore your possibilities and understand that you have the capability to be a science person. There's nothing to being a science person.
Yeah, that was just so, again, in a very typical Farscape way, under subverting something that you expect to be true, which is like, oh, Pilot is the guy, he's like the Power Rangers head, where he comes in and you like always assume that he knows what he's talking about.
Zordon? God damn, dude.
I do mean Zordon. Thank you.
Doy.
But you expect anybody who's a holographic head to be infallible and to be very smart. So I really appreciated that moment. Because it was just a cool, like, that's a character pairing that on paper you wouldn't expect the show to have. But we saw the first inklings of it in the episode where Aaron was about to die of the heat thing, the second episode we watched. And Pilot was like, I'm not as afraid of you as I am of other peacekeepers. Like, you're cool. And then in this episode, he's like, yeah, I feel like I can trust you. I just think that that's a really great relationship that they have. It's also cool that Rigel is starting to trust Aaron as well. Right,
because first of all, they have good interactions with each other. And I don't know, that whole scene, it's like almost inspiring that he's just like, I seem like the nerdy sort of techie guy because I'm a alien that lives in the ship, but I'm no more capable of things than anyone else here is. Like, that's sort of a really cool way to think about life. Is like the only thing that's differing you and me is just like where we are in life, like our positions. And so that's sort of inspiring to someone watching the show, I feel like.
Yeah.
I forget what else I was going to say. I thought it was...
Oh, yeah, go ahead, sorry.
I was just going to say I thought it was cute that she pulled off a piece of his ear. They keep pulling off pieces of Rigel's ear, and that's becoming a running gag.
I thought that was wasn't that his mustache?
Or yeah, it's always either his ear or his mustache, and then Pilot's like, stop, don't pull another piece off, because that'll, kill him.
Well, so that was one of the I noticed watching these two episodes that Aaron, surprisingly, always gets the best comebacks, or the best, one-line jokes. And the great one there, when she breaks off the mustache, Pilot's like, maybe don't touch any more of his protrusions. And she kind of looks at Rigel's frozen body and she's like, well, guess you'll have to do that yourself. And
it's the Woody bit. She gets a lot of...
Well, Woody was funny because she got it wrong. But she also gets the most lines where she purposefully says something funny.
I think I know I was going to message you about this, but I wanted to mention it on the show. That's a pretty common sort of smart way to write your comedy, is to not give it all to the comedic relief. Rigel is not the only source of jokes on the show, and specifically to give it to the character that's considered the most capable and intelligent and self-sufficient, smart, serious person, and to be like, oh no, they're clever too, and it's not all about being stupid. Sometimes comedy can just be you being one-upping someone and being smart.
Yeah, Aaron, the great thing about Aaron as a character is that she is cold and kind of ruthless in certain ways, but she's not unfun. She's not against the idea of enjoying herself.
Right.
And playing around, whether it's with teasing Crichton or just generally insulting somebody for the sport of it. It's something that I appreciate, because I think this show would get bogged down if she was not only cold, but also didn't even get, jokes.
Right, she's does not, because then she's just a robot. She's just does not compute. It makes her more fleshed out, I guess.
And just cool vulnerability on her part with the whole oh, I got the science. I did the science. That was great. And I think, up there in terms of my favorite scenes of the episode, the one where she and Crichton are hiding behind that car, that truck. I don't know what that was. And people keep walking by, and they have to keep putting on fake smiles.
Yes, I forgot about that.
As they're yelling at each other.
They're a very serious argument.
And also that scene kind of echoed the one in PK Tech Girl when he's like, "Can we talk about this?" And she's like, "Not my problem." And he's like, "No, really, let's talk about this." Because in this scene, she's like, "What's going on down here?" And he's like, "I don't want to talk about it." And she's like, "No, that doesn't work. You have to tell me. You have time to tell me the Tanit root makes people content. Like, just say it."
The thing is, he basically tells her. I was a little annoyed by that part because she's like, "You got to tell me what's going on." He's like, "It's really complicated. Basically, the root does some crazy shit." And she's like, "All right, you're gonna stop and tell me what's going on." He's like, "What else do you want me to say? Like, just follow along and like keep up. Like, it's not. I can't exposition dump you right now."
Yeah, I just thought that was cool because they were both kind of justified.
Yes.
And his only excuse was like, I was out in the field all day. I don't want to explain.
I've been throwing up for hours.
But then that scene moved very organically from them fighting to her being like, "Whoa, you thought you were working. I was doing science." And he's like, "Oh, you were doing... Oh, that's so great. Oh, I'm so happy you were doing science. I love science."
It's so real. It's so lovely.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Every time, yeah, it's the communication theme again. It's just whenever people stop, it's my favorite thing about their relationship is that it's so out there and so like able to be talked about that there's nothing hidden. There's no hidden agendas or sad feelings that they don't tell each other. It's just everything is like, fucking just tell me. Okay, I have a really bad stomach ache, but like we have like a really big problem to take care of. Let's just work on it together. Like I love it. The show is written by smart people.
And that scene was like one long take too. I think. So that was cool. A couple of scenes like that in this episode or one other one that I remember when what's the white lady's name?
Well, I'm glad you asked because it is Volme.
Volme, when she first takes Crichton in the back and she's like, "So you have a cargo ship," and it just stays on her for like a minute.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't cut. That was so cool. I think I was kind of looking away from the screen and then I just snapped back and really focused on her.
I think that...
Interestingly, sorry, I don't mean to cut you off so much. Go ahead. I really don't do it on purpose. It's the Skype.
I know, and I hate recording things over Skype for this exact reason a lot.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, I think that specific shot is done because her makeup is fantastic, and they want to be like, dude, look. But also, it's a well-shot show. Like, this show's, like, progressively looking better. And, like, great CG. Like, we didn't talk about this in PK Tech Girl, but, like, a lot of the exterior shots of the ship they were on, fucking excellent.
Yeah.
And, it, like, well-shot and well, like, produced is how I kind of am starting to notice that the show is becoming because of moments like that. What were you going to say? I'm sorry.
I forgot her name again. Volme?
Yep.
Volme's performance, you can weirdly compare it to, I forget her name, but in Back and Back to the Future, the female character who turned out to be evil.
Yep.
Because they both have that same weird cadence of like, "Oh, John Crichton. But for some reason, in Back and Back to the Future, it really sucked, and here it worked really well. And I wonder why. I wonder if it's just an actress thing, or if it's like the costume was better suited for it this time, or what. I don't know.
Well, that's appropriate because I was about to start segueing into trivia because there's a piece of trivia in here. Leslie Vanderwalt remembers Angie Milliken's role. Angie Milliken plays Volme. Yeah. And she says, noting that we had red contact lenses in her eyes, and in the first shot, as she walked towards the camera, her eyes started flickering. I thought that her contacts had dried out and were going to slip out, but it turns out she was just doing that as part of her performance. Like, that actress clearly has nuance and is, like, a little elevated above most one-off side character performances, I think.
I thought she was really good.
Yes. I was saying that she talks really slowly, but I think that's, like you said, deliberate. It makes her sound cool.
She didn't talk slowly in a way that was bad. She talked slowly in a way that really owned the space. It felt very appropriate for this character who's in a position of power but doesn't really know what to do with it. Because people who are in a position of power can afford to pause, take dramatic, regal pauses. But for her, part of the pause is like, oh, what do I do now? I'm pausing. I don't really know what to say next.
Yeah, there's a lot of nuance. Like, that's a very conscious choice to do that with her.
Yeah.
And it's not just a weird line reading or anything. I really, 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 really enjoyed the extended Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome reference, because I feel like not enough people have seen that movie, and I love it deeply. Crane basically mentions like he's like, yeah, the Mel Gibson Tina Turner cage match. It looks like that, and then they're like, what are you talking about? And he's like, don't worry about it. Nobody saw the third one. And you're like, I did. If you're listening to this, go watch Mad Max Beyond. Actually, go watch all three, because the new one's coming out this summer, and those three movies are all
right.
excellent.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'll be right back.
I'll do an extended. Hey, how you just watched all three?
Yeah, I did. The third one reminded me a lot of that one Farscape episode that I watched like 5 years ago.
It's Old Man Alan, because I apparently aged to an old man in 5 years. I'm not surprised. Mad Max is amazing. I'm going to go on an extended tangent about those movies after this recording with you, and you're not going to let me stop.
I don't... Okay.
Yeah, it's going to happen. Sorry.
Cool.
Terry Ryan stated that, I like this little bit, costumes should always look like a logical decision. If you think of farmers, they're always out working in the fields, so you'd give them all bleached hair and suntan skin and a sort of cracking effect because you're in hot weather. And because Volme never went out in the sun, they pushed the colors, making the Sycarans a bit browner than they should be, and that's why Volme was very pale. It's because she's rich enough to not have to go outside. Like, oh.
Yeah, that makes a lot of... I think, the costume design on this episode was excellent.
It's super clever, and that's why, even if it's like racially weird, like what are they going for?
Yeah.
They clearly, like the costume people are doing good work on the show.
Yeah.
Also, everyone was really impressed by Claudia Black during the pilot scenes. That must be hard to act at a puppet, or to act at pilot, you know what I mean?
Right, well, when it's just, the spot where his head would show up, but there's literally nothing there.
Exactly, and she has to do this like very nuanced performance of like empathy and relation. And she's like, working with Rigel and, pulling off pieces of him for research while talking to us. She's like playing with a puppet and talking to a puppet, and it's one of her best emotional scenes. Like, good on you, Claudia Black.
She's fantastic.
I don't want to say she's my favorite character because I know she's yours, but she's great.
We can have the same favorite.
No, we can't agree on anything. We have to fight all the time. Let's do it.
You're right.
Magellan, I need you to do something for me.
No.
Please?
No.
All right, well, I'm going to do it. Hey, guys, I'm the guy who's this week going to tell you about next week's episodes.
No!
I'm taking your job.
I didn't know! I thought we were fighting. I thought that was the bit. I want to read for the next episode.
Please.
Alan.
Well, you have to have them already ready.
You're right. That's why I'm vamping for time by pretending to be so sad about this.
Dude, huge bummer how you're sad and not at all
just so sad about Farscape.
Farscape, the TV show. Australian.
Okay, search that. There it is. Perfect.
Yeah, excellent. Hi. Hey, how you doing?
I've had it up the whole time.
Oh.
Okay, so the next episodes we're going to watch are...
If you're listening at home and you want to watch with us.
Right. Episode 7 on the Netflix order, IET. To avoid being traced by the Peacekeepers, Moya is forced to crash land on a planet whose inhabitants are unaware of extraterrestrial life.
Whoa.
So that sounds interesting. I've heard that episode's not great.
Oh, bummer.
Also, that episode is the one most affected by the shifting of the air dates. I think that episode was originally supposed to be the second one.
Uh-oh.
So we're going to take a weird step back.
We're going to lose character development?
Yeah.
Oh, does that thing continue through the whole show, or is that just season 1?
No, I think it's just the first 7 episodes. I think after that it's fixed.
Okay. So so this is it then.
Like, this is the last time that's going to be a problem.
Fantastic.
Or at least as drastic of a problem as it was.
Sure.
Then, well, let me tell you. Episode 8, That Old Black Magic.
Whoa.
Okay, strap in for this. An evil sorcerer tricks Crichton and Crace into a deadly confrontation. To save Crichton, Zan must rekindle spiritual powers buried long ago.
Oh, boy.
So there's, like, magic in this show, I guess?
And Crace?
Yeah, he's back.
I love Crace.
He's back.
I love him.
Can I just say I really... Like, we kind of complained when we watched the pilot about how, the bad guy's British. Why is everybody British in space? It's really fun when everybody's Australian in space.
I was going to mention that, actually. That's good that you mentioned that. Because you got Aaron's son is very, very Australian. You have the other Peacekeeper is very Australian. Very much so, the PK Tech girl.
Yeah.
A bunch of the aliens on the planet in this episode were kind of Australian. It's always weird when you know exactly what country a fantasy or sci-fi property came out of, because it's a little, it pulls you out. Like when you realize that everyone from Lord of the Rings is in New Zealand, you're like, oh, Middle Earth is New Zealand, that's it. It's not a place anyway. It's, I can just go there. It kills the magic a little bit.
I like it though, because we're used to everyone in space has British accents,
right?
So it's just doing the same thing of everyone in space has blank accent, but they're mixing it up so it feels different from other things. So I like it.
I'm gonna remember that I like this show next week and not forget that it's good. Thank you for listening to episode 3.
You're welcome.
Of ScapeChatz. Yeah, we work hard to make this for you. Listen to episode 1 if you want plugs, because I promised that we weren't going to do plugs every week because that's boring. I love you very much.
Did we do plugs?
I did them. I made them. Me.
For what?
Just episode 1. I was like, hey, follow me on Twitter if you want to talk to me.
Oh.
That's it.
Okay.
I've been Alan.
I've been Magellan.
And have a good week. We'll see you next week. Yay. Whoosh, space.